Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. My name is Jared Budlong. I'm running as an independent candidate for governor here in Alabama as a write-in. Well, this is Tuesday night. It is a policy night, so we're going to chat policy. We're going to talk about anything that affects our state as a whole. And tonight we're going to focus on some ballot measures, some amendments that are coming up in November that everybody gets to vote on. There are 10 amendments, and then there's a recompiling of our state constitution. I'm going to briefly touch on that one. I've actually reached out to a couple people, and I think I'm scheduling a meeting with somebody to talk about that a little bit more in depth to get some more insight, because my perspective is limited on the changes. I have concerns, and people that have been involved in the decade-long process of trying to get this far don't like what I've had to say so far. So I'm trying to hear them out because they put a lot of work into it. So I want to hear them out, but I have concerns. So that's what we're doing right now. Hopefully sound's coming through. Amanda's giving me celebration things, so I think we're good on that side. All right. So let me share my screen, and we're going to jump over to the Secretary of State's website, because that's, we're just going to get our info straight from the state at this point. So we're going to share a tab, I think. Yeah, let's do that. And if you want to see what we're showing and you're on TikTok, you're going to have to go to another platform. I can't share my screen to TikTok, so if I could, I would, but I can't. All right. So we're going to talk about the Constitution rewrite, or the recompile. I want to make sure I use the right language here. The recompile does a couple things. Effectively, there's three. We are reordering everything so it's organized. So if it is a if it is a countywide, or a county-specific amendment, then they're going to put all of those together. So for me, it would be Baldwin County. All of those should be put together. They are putting other things that are just in the same relevancy. They will put those in the same place on the Constitution, or in the Constitution. We are removing repealed laws. So if there are laws that have been repealed and are no longer relevant, they're removing those from the Constitution. And then the last piece, they are attempting to remove racist language. So if there's anything that's problematic and is not okay, they're trying to remove that now. And the last piece is that they're actually removing the involuntary servitude exception from the Constitution, so that slavery and involuntary servitude are no longer acceptable practices within the state. So all of that, broadly speaking, sounds good. Not necessarily opposed to any of it. My concern, in which, this is what I've been telling anybody that I've talked to, my concern, and I don't know which way I'm voting yet, but my concern is that we are removing language and making it less clear the intent of this ridiculously long Constitution, which is 400,000+ words, 978 amendments long, plus the 10 we're potentially voting on. We're removing the intent, and that is to install white supremacy into law. So that's my concern, is we're making it less easy to tell future generations. That's what the purpose of this Constitution is, and that's what I'm concerned about. And that's what I'm going to talk to somebody else, a couple people, hopefully, who have been working on this for decades, trying to, rewrite the Constitution, not recompile, but actually rewrite, and then on this measure specifically to actually recompile and have a more legible Constitution as best you can when it's as long as it is in our state. So that's the long and short, or the long version of my short problem with it, and we'll talk about it more in a future broadcast. So we're going to jump into Amendment 1, proposed by, where did it go? Representative Brown. It's House Bill 131 from 2021. They're proposing an amendment to Section 16 of the Constitution, now appearing as Section 16 of the official recompilation, so the new thing that we're going to vote on as well. Let's see, to create a NIA's law to provide that an individual is entitled to reasonable bail prior to conviction unless charged with capital murder, kidnapping in the first degree, grape. I'm going to be careful because of TikTok. Let me get back over. Grape in the first degree, sodomy in the first degree, sexual torture, domestic violence in the first degree, human trafficking in the first degree, burglary in the first degree, arson in the first degree, robbery in the first degree, terrorism when The specified offense is a Class A felony other than murder and aggravated child abuse of a child under the age of 6. All right, so that's your number one amendment that you can vote on. It is written as yes, no, pretty straightforward. There is no implementing legislation directly related to the statewide ballot measure. It'll appear on the ballot after federal offices. So they're talking about placement, where it's going to be on the ballot. There's actually sample ballots available for anybody. If you have questions or you want to know what's going to be on your ballot, you can actually search for the 2022 general election sample ballot for Alabama, and you can actually download that and see what it looks like. It won't look exactly like your precinct because it's including several from your district, but it'll give you an idea of what's going to be on your ballot. So definitely go check those out. Let's see. Yeah, and then it's just majority vote at that point. So let's reread through it real quick. Proposing an amendment to Section 16, provide that an individual is entitled to a reasonable bail unless it's all the things we mentioned earlier. So I don't know what reasonable bail means. I have a problem with cash bail in the first place. So there's concern that that's not solving a bunch of problems. There's still the question about what reasonable bail is. And I don't know that there is any direct information about what they classify that as. Yeah. So we're going to jump over to the next amendment. And of course, the state website didn't open that in a new tab, so I'll do that manually this time. All right, amendment number 2. And we are proposing an amendment to the Constitution to authorize the state, a county, or municipality to grant federal award funds or any other source of funding designated for broadband infrastructure by state law to public or private entities for providing or expanding broadband infrastructure. So they are trying to allow anybody to award those funds so that they can expand broadband infrastructure. That does say to public or private entities, so some people may have concerns about that, but that's our deal. That's what we're voting on in the first one. I don't see anything that will be potentially problematic, but plain language summary here. The amendment shall make it clear that the state, county, or city town may grant federal funds or other state funding to any public or private organization to expand access to high-speed internet, meaning broadband. If we vote yes, it's yes. If we vote no, it's no. Nothing really problematic with the amendment. Depending on how you feel about public and private entities expanding broadband, vote your conscience there. But that one's pretty straightforward. And if anybody has any feedback or anything they want to put in, please put it in the comments. If anybody wants to jump into the meeting because you know what's going on in some of these and I'm skipping things, please feel free to jump in. There's a link in the website or on the website, which is linked in my bio. All right, number 3. This is proposed act, Senate Bill 196 from 2022. Proposing an amendment to Constitution to require the governor to provide notice to the Attorney General and to the victim's family prior to granting reprieve or commutation of a person's sentenced to death, and to void the reprieve or commutation if the governor fails to provide notice. I get where they're going. And it's just providing notice. Yeah. I don't have any problem with that off the top of my head. It's all pretty straightforward. Again, most of these are pretty straightforward. There's nothing long so far. Make sure I'm not missing any comments on socials. Nope, we're good. Taylor, if there's anything on TikTok, make sure to bring it up. Oh, you know what? You guys can't see what I was just reading, so I didn't switch tabs. Sorry. But I read it out loud, so we're good. Let's jump back. We're going to go to amendment number 4. Proposed House Bill 388 from 2021, sorry, proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Alabama as amended to provide that the implementation date for any bill enacted by the legislature in a calendar year in which the general election is to be held and relating to the conduct of the general election shall at least be 6 months before the general election. Oh, we could talk about this one for a few minutes. Depending on if there's any dissenting opinions in the meeting tonight. But what that sounds like is they're trying to prevent the legislature from enacting bills that will directly affect the upcoming election. And as long as they're doing it before 6 months, people, in theory, have time to prevent it. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it offhand. I actually want to hear from anybody who is watching. We got 4 people here and another 7 or 8 here. I'm not sure this has been a productive conversation on TikTok so far, so we're just gonna keep scrolling. John and Anita Taylor, do you have anything? Amanda, you got anything? It's the first one that's kind of questionable on what people may think about it. Nope. All right. I'm not necessarily opposed to it on first reading, at least. So we'll keep looking into them. And if you have comments and you're not watching this live, put it in the comments below, and we'll definitely take a look. All right. So now Amendment 5. Let's share that tab. This is proposed bill, Senate Bill 68 from 2021's legislative session, proposing an amendment to the Constitution to delete a provision giving the probate court of each county general jurisdiction over an orphan's business. That's an interesting one. That I am not. Who then has? I would be curious now. Who then has jurisdiction? Is that now state jurisdiction? So that the local courts don't have jurisdiction over an orphan. I need to look more into that before I even attempt to give an opinion, because I have thoughts, but I need to understand what's changing. Because I'm not sure where that power then goes. I have to assume it goes higher at that point. If we're going above county, we're going to go to state. And our state has enough concerns with the Department of Public or Human Resources, rather. Not entirely sure I like them having more control over things rather than just leaving it up to the local county. Let's see if there's anybody with thoughts on here. Jennifer, we're talking about ballot amendments. Yeah. Yeah, Amanda. So you asked if we're talking about gerrymandering or rules for qualifications for candidates. It doesn't specify, so it could be anything. Right? So we're talking about the previous bill. I think there's a delay on Facebook again. So let's see if we can reopen the last one and share this tab back. And I'll zoom in a bit just to make sure it's legible on social media. Proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Alabama as amended to provide that the implementation date for any bill enacted by the legislature in a calendar year in which the general election is to be held, and it relates to the conduct of the general election, that shall be at least 6 months before the general election. So we're talking about the conduct of the election. That's probably related to voting, but that could be gerrymandering related. Yeah. That actually, it could be. They're not specifying anything in specific at this point. But it could be related to gerrymandering. It could be related to polling stations. Yeah, it sounds fishy, and that's a frustration that I have about the way things are written a lot of the time, is that it's written in a way that it's written rather vague, where if you don't know, you don't know. And in one case, like it does prevent people from changing rules, 3 weeks before the election, which is good. But should it be further? Like, should it be a full calendar year before the election so that everybody has plenty of time to get caught up? It's a really good question.
What can be done about gerrymandering at this point in Alabama?
A lot of that stuff's written into law. So like we have to do a lot of stuff. Like we would have to get people to actually be in office to then make the change. That my understanding is that's been in the works since the 60s or so, and it's pretty hard to turn around because the way it's been set up is they consolidate power based on when districts shift. You can't do certain things once a district shifts. I don't know the specifics. That is outside of my direct realm of knowledge, but I know it's been piling on since the 60s or 70s. If anybody has any info, feel free to pop it in the chat, because that's definitely relevant to this amendment. There's something about what can be changed after a district shifts. So Amanda, like you said if someone's abusing a loophole, hypothetically, it couldn't be caught or fixed to maintain the integrity of the election. No, but in theory, this could prevent last minute changes to how people are organized for elections. Where their polling stations can be required, how far away they can be from their polling station, like all kinds of stuff could be changed. And if you have at least 6 months, people can get the word out. If a law gets changed and does that. Again, I'm not advocating for this amendment necessarily. I need to look into it further, and maybe who wrote it and why, what their previous intents were, anything else that they've done that may be correlated to this amendment. So we'll take a look at that later. But most of this is just wanting everybody to be on the same page that there are a bunch of amendments happening, and they need to be aware of that because there's 10. All right, so I believe that was 5. Let's jump to 6. Yeah. So let's jump to number 6, and we'll zoom in again. And this is House Bill 178 from 2021's regular session, proposing an amendment to the Constitution. Each municipality authorized under Amendment number 8 to the Constitution of Alabama of 1901, now appearing Section 216.01 of the recompiled Constitution of Alabama, to levy and collect an ad valorem tax pursuant to Amendment number 8 for the purposes of paying bonds and the interest thereon, and may also levy and collect such ad valorem tax and utilize such funds for capital improvements on a pay-as-you-go basis at a rate not exceeding the rate then lawfully permitted for the municipality to directly pay the costs of public capital improvements, as well as to pay principal and interest of bonds, warrants, and other securities issued to finance or refinance the costs of the improvements, and to ratify, validate, and confirm the levy and collection of such tax levied and collected for any of these purposes prior to the ratification of this amendment. Nice long one. All right, so there's things we actually need to look up. So let's pull up the new recompiled Constitution to make sure we're looking at the right sections. That's 216.01. Let's pull up the new proposed Constitution. Let's see. And of course, the link that they have there doesn't actually give the Constitution. That's a whole nother link. So now we'll open another tab and share this one. And it's a 404. Even better. Cool. Of course. How is that a 404? Literally the link that they give us for more information is a 404. All right, so let's do it this way. Come on, Google. 2022 Alabama recompile Constitution. Statewide amendments, proposed Constitution. That one works. What is... I don't know what the difference was. All right. So let's check out. That's it. Where's the actual... I believe it's the top one. Yeah, okay. So we're going to go to 216.01, I think. Is that what I said earlier? Section 216.01. All right, so limitation on property tax of municipal corporations. No city, town, or village or other municipal corporation other than as provided in this article shall levy or collect a higher rate of taxation in any 1 year on the property situated therein than 1/2 of 1% of the value of such property as assessed for state taxation during the preceding year, provided that for the purpose of paying debts existing on the 6th day of December, 1875, and the interest thereon, a tax of 1% may be levied and collected to be appropriated exclusively to the payment of such indebtedness, and provide further that this section shall not apply to the city of Mobile, which city may, from and after the ratification of this Constitution, levy a tax not to exceed the rate of 3/4 of 1% to pay the expenses of city government, and may also levy a tax not to exceed 3/4 of 1% to pay the debt existing on the 6th day of December 1875. I'm not sure we're going to be able to keep track of this for this. I'm going to have to reread through it, and we'll give everybody an overview, because this is literally just one large block of text. And
A TLDR.
yeah, I think that's our best use of time, is to do a TLDR later and follow up. You know, let's just whatever. I'm not that I'll get ranting on my problem with what we're doing this year. It's fine. We're gonna move forward. Pursuant to amendment number 8. All right, so let's see what. It doesn't show. It doesn't even show amendment 8. All right, yep, we're gonna skip that, and we'll come back. We'll do a TLDR later. I was hoping it was one of the few that actually is easy to read and be fine, but that was not the case today. All right, so that was we're going to number 7, I believe. Let's share this tab. And House Bill 458 from 2022's regular session, proposing an amendment to revise Amendment 772 to the Constitution of Alabama of 1901 as amended, to specify that all counties and municipalities may exercise the authority and powers granted by Amendment 772 to provide for economic and industrial development, to permit notice for Amendment 772 projects to be published in any newspaper in circulation in that county or municipality, and to ratify all actions and agreements of any county or municipality done under Amendment 772, unless subject to pending judicial proceedings on the date of its adoption in the amendment. All right, do we want to take chances on Amendment 772? We're going to give that a shot. Oh, and you know what? They actually mentioned... They didn't mention the recompile, so they're talking about the original Constitution, the current one, which is not what I pulled up earlier. So, and what was the amendment again? 772? And we're going to share this tab. And no, it's long. Okay. Promotion of economic industrial development by county commission, governing body of any county, and the governing body of any municipality located therein, for which a local constitutional amendment has not been adopted, authorizing any of the following, shall have full and continuing power to do any of the following. Use public funds to purchase, lease, or otherwise acquire real property, buildings, plants, factories, facilities, machinery, and equipment of any kind, or to utilize the properties heretofore purchased and otherwise acquired, and improve and develop the properties for the use as sites for industry of any kind, or as industrial park projects, including but not limited to grading and the construction of roads, drainage, sewers, sewage, waste disposal systems, parking areas, and utilities to serve the sites and projects. You can lease and sell, grant, exchange, or otherwise convey on terms approved by the governing body of the county or the municipality as applicable, all in any part of real property, buildings, plants, factories, machinery, so on and so forth. Keep going, keep going. to any individual firm, corporation, or other business entity, public or private, including any individual development board or any other public corporation or authority heretofore and hereafter created by the county and or municipality for the purpose of constructing, developing equipment, and operating industrial, commercial, research, or service facilities of any kind. Yeah, we're going to do another TLDR here piece also. That is not going to happen today. So we're going to keep going through that. So it sounds like they're trying to give that power to all properties or all municipalities. I'm going to go back and reread it because it's both of them say if not already kind of prevented. So I'll have to go double check to see how that actually reads in full. All right, let's jump back into the correct window. Thank you, Alabama. So we're going to close all of those. All right, and that was number 7, so we'll go into number 8. Share this tab, zoom in a bit, too far. This is Senate Bill 74 from the 2021 regular session relating to Shelby County, proposing an amendment to the Constitution to bring certain privately owned sewer systems that use public rights-of-way of public roads under the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission under certain conditions. Under what conditions? This is the stuff that frustrates me. They're like, under certain conditions. I'm like, well, okay, but what conditions? Because there's literally nothing else here that says what conditions those are. I guess we would have to reach out to Senator Wagner and ask them. Because it doesn't say. Now, it does only apply to Shelby County, so if you're not in Shelby County, it doesn't directly affect you. So, can probably ignore, but I'm curious now that because they're putting stuff in there that just isn't fully explained. All right, so let's jump to the next amendment. This is Senate Bill 74, 2021's regular session. Nope, Shelby County. That's the same one. So we opened it twice. Let's try that again. Okay. All right, so House Bill 148 from 2022's regular session relating to Jefferson County and Tuscaloosa County, proposing an amendment to the Constitution to bring privately owned sewer systems that use public rights-of-way in the city limits of Lakeview under the jurisdiction of Public Service Commission beginning January 2023 and ending in December 31st of 2027. So no restrictions other than time, and fully explains it. That makes sense. There's reasons behind that. This is Jefferson County, and I know they had a bunch of issues with bond sales. Taylor, if you remember the details better than I do, it's been a couple of years, so I don't remember the exact details. But I remember they had issues with funding and selling bonds and not having enough funding. But that's about the extent of what I remember off the top of my head. Let me jump over.
That's you got as much as I got.
Okay, all right. Just making sure I'm not misremembering or missing some pertinent details. Cool. All right. So I believe this is our last amendment, number 10. Jump in and zoom in again. And this is House Bill 319 of the 2022 regular session, and proposing an amendment to the Constitution to authorize Code Commissioner, contingent upon the ratification of an official of the new Constitution, the recompile for 2022, to renumber and place constitutional amendments ratified before or on the same day as the Constitution of Alabama based on logical sequence and particular subject or topic of the amendment, and to provide for the transfer of existing annotations to any section of the Constitution so that it matches the new Constitution. So I'm assuming this has to be partnered with the new constitution, so that if anything else gets ratified, like these 9 others, that they get transferred over to the new one and have any annotations and everything else. That one makes sense. If somebody can tell me why that wouldn't make sense, please let me know. But that one seems logical and just has to be paired with the recompile. So if the recompile is voted on and approved, all of the new amendments get brought over with it with their annotations, so it all makes sense. So that's all straightforward for me. That all seems to make sense. So I'm going to jump back over to other social media. It looks like everybody's on the same page. That's lots of words. TLDR is definitely necessary at this point, so we'll be doing that in a future video and put that out as best we can. I think, yep, so that's everything outside of the recompile. Now there is an actual note that came with the recompile, so we're going to share that and read through it real quick since we have some time. This is related to the new constitution. I'm using the term new very loosely. There are minor tweaks. The majority of the content is still there. It's still 978 amendments until we add the next 9, but it's still 400,000 words. It's still really long. We've removed racist language. We've reorganized it so it's easier to read, and removed repealed laws. So Alabama voters have the opportunity to vote on a reorganized state constitution on November 8th. The current constitution has been in effect since 1901, contains outdated language, and has been amended nearly 1,000 times, 978 at least right now. If approved, it'll be titled the Constitution of Alabama of 2022. All members of the legislature agree to this proposed reorganized constitution. It will do the following: rearrange the constitution so that similar subjects are located together. That's what I talked about earlier when we said the counties will be put together, or if it's related to a specific policy, that stuff will be put together in a certain chunk, and that way you're not having to reference, like we did earlier, this amendment has to do with Amendment 772, which has to do with Amendment 305, which has to do with Amendment 216, which has to do with Amendment 85, which has to do with Amendment 2, right? They're trying to cut back on that part there. They're removing racist language. They're deleting repeated or repealed portions in language, placing all amendments which deal with economic development together, and then arranging local amendments by county. So basically what I said it further, they've broken down the reorganizing and grouping things into specific categories, but same thing. The reorganized constitution will make no changes other than those listed above, and will not make any changes related to taxes. So that's not changing. If the majority of the voters vote yes, it will be it'll replace the current constitution as the governing document of the state. If the majority vote no, we keep the current constitution as amended with the other amendments that may get voted on in November. There are no costs to adopting the reorganized constitution. The authority for adopting this reorganized constitution is in Amendment 951 to the Constitution of Alabama in 1901, which was approved by the voters in November 3rd of 2020. I want you guys to catch that. In 2 years, we've gone up how many amendments? 25 plus amendments in 2 years. Amendment 951 set out the process for a committee with public input to draft this proposed reorganized constitution. In Act 2022-111, the legislature approved the committee's proposed a draft and placed it on this general election ballot for final consideration. So all of this is available on the Secretary of State's website. Please go check it out if you want more details, or if you want to look into this yourself. All of that is available on the Secretary of State's website. Your best bet is just to search your statewide 2022 ballot amendments, and it should pull up this page, and that'll give you a bunch more info. From there, I'm here to answer some questions. I've got some time, so we can open this up to just a general policy discussion. I'm sure questions have come up that weren't directly related to the amendments, but I'm willing to jump into some general questions if people have them at this point, since you've sat with me through that ridiculous spiel of words. What did Amanda call them earlier? Those were words for sure. So
yeah, somebody commented on TikTok and said, I wish I understood what you were saying. And I was like, girl.
Yeah.
Me too.
No, and I'm not going to lie. That's part of the reason we're going to do a TLDR, because just reading it verbatim doesn't always mean you fully understand the context and what's happening, which is, it's why things should be looked at now. Like, we should all be looking at this now so that we're informed on November 8th when we go to vote. It's not something you just want to read and try to guess at. Like, let's look into. Can you imagine reading one of those on November 8th for the first time? Like, you wouldn't know what to say. You literally, you don't know, because it's referencing the Constitution, which is 400,000 words. You need to be prepping ahead of time, which is part of the reason we're doing it in a meeting. It's like, hey, this stuff's happening. It's coming. They're on the ballot. Like, that is not a hypothetical. Those 10 things, those 11 things will be on the ballot November 8th. Be informed before you show up. And unless I'm misspeaking, if I am, somebody please correct me, but you should be able to bring in your sample ballots with your choices, so you don't have to remember them. You can get your sample ballot, mark it, and then have that ready for you. Phones, I would need to go double check, because I'm not 100% on the phone thing. You should be able to, but I don't know if they want people using their phones because of the fact that they're attached to cameras. So, Amanda, I'm not 100% sure on how kosher that one is. Need to double check on it. My understanding was you weren't supposed to, so not trying to out you, but you're commenting on a public video, so sorry. Do we have any questions that came up, Taylor, that we can address, even if they weren't amendment related earlier?
I mean, they probably are no longer on the live, but the Second Amendment one obviously came up.
Yeah, it comes up.
I directed them to your
to the website. Yeah. And I probably still need to rewrite that, because I don't have a definitive stance on the fact, like, or on what we should be changing. I just know we need to change something and try something. It comes up
basically
all too often.
If you have a real good idea out there on how to stop school shootings.
Well, that's it's not even just schools though, right? So it's accidentals, it's
sure.
Movie theaters, grocery stores. Like, the problem isn't just schools, and that's a lot of people focus on it because that's what ends up in the news a lot, and rightfully so. Like, it's something I'm concerned about as a parent. What I also recognize is that we can't just take firearms away from residents of the state without also taking them away from other groups of people. And by that I mean the police. Like, we can't disarm the citizens without having concerns about the state power still having firearms. And, like, that's a concern for me. And not for me directly, currently. I have not had to worry about that, but I know plenty of people do. And that's something I'm considering whenever I say, no, we're not just going to take people's firearms away.
I am, if you look at me, I am not what you would think of when you think a cop would pull their gun on me. But even I've had a gun pulled on me by a police officer, so I feel like, of course, there is a certain demographic that is disproportionately affected, and I am in no way trying to say that I, as a little white girl,
Yeah.
However, I'm saying that, I'm not the stereotypical one that would be affected, but, I've had a gun pulled on me by a cop. So it's,
Jolly Green in the chat on TikTok brought up gun education. I mean, that's definitely a part of it. And that would help with some, like the accidentals. It doesn't really address the mass attacks. I'm gonna be careful what words we use on TikTok, but it doesn't really address the mass casualties and the mass incidents, because our state has already had 15 or 16 incidents with more than 4 people involved. We'll say it that way. And education wouldn't necessarily solve those. Tony, you mentioned mental evaluations. Possibly.
I think it's Tanya.
Oh, Tanya. Yeah, good call. Sorry. Tanya, maybe. There's concerns there also because of how that could be used against certain people, that it may not actually fit the requirements. Again, part of my concern is how that stuff will get abused and taken advantage of to keep people from having access to things that they really shouldn't be restricted from.
But I also feel like, some of the people who commit some of the more larger scale atrocities, there have been red flags prior
Yeah.
to the crimes. And, half of it is um half of it is just enacting the laws that we already have, or just doing what we're supposed to be doing to begin with.
That's part of it. The other thing that's been mentioned previously is extending the delay between when you apply and when you can get it, so that they can finalize the actual checks. Because there's currently like a minimum period, and if the checks take too long, like you just have to wait, and if it hasn't come back, it hasn't come back. And I don't recall off the top of my head if that applies to our state. Again, this is not part of my campaign policy, like my key points of the campaign. So I still haven't gotten a full comprehensive wraparound on this. The other, let's see, Joey has to go deeper than evaluations. We need to ask how it got to that point and how to mediate. We also have to ask, like, who's predominantly doing a lot of it, right? At least, especially if we're talking about the mass incidents, like, at least nationwide, there is a demographic, and it's concerning. So I gotta be careful because we're live on TikTok. I got banned the last time I got into this conversation, so I'm gonna be careful about how we phrase things currently. But there are a lot of people who point
napkin
to
flavored nonsense.
Yeah. Well, there are people that point to resources about gun reform, and a lot of them point towards like restricting access to the tool itself, but only for regular citizens, not restricting how much the police end up getting and how militarized the police are, and that's a concern. And none of them that I found actually point towards figuring out why people are the intentional ones, like why people are actually committing the acts in the first place. Like none of the policies address that, and that's where a lot of my campaign is always like, all right, but why is it happening? Like why? Not what, why? Like we all agree it's happening, but why is it happening? And that's the thing that it doesn't seem like people doesn't want to look at, is why does this keep happening? Like what are the circumstances, what are the commonalities with all of the incidents, and why are we not addressing those? And part of it's a healthcare thing, like a mental health care, and not like necessarily unstable, but if it's not saying, I'm trying to think of the right words for this, but just like general better mental health care would help in a lot of situations. Some people feel like they don't have a choice but to do the thing rather than having help in the first place, to where they hopefully wouldn't end up in that situation. So Jolly asked a good question. What am I wanting to focus on for the situation in the prison systems? A lot of it is outside of my direct control. So my plan currently is to try to get the situation under control as best I can, so that we can start actually implementing the policies we have in place, and then pushing for better policies within Department of Corrections. Right? So some of the things are, a lot of things that are happening in there right now are due to low staffing. So some of it is like getting more supplies for inmates. I need to check to see how that's set up currently. The focus has been trying to stop the immediate harm that's happening, not supplies necessarily. Something we'd happily look into, and we will. But the focus previously has been trying to stop the immediate harm. I know a lot of the problems right now, it's all set up with private agreements, and they're already in contract to do things. So we'd have to potentially wait for those contracts to end or pay fees to end contracts ahead of time. And that's, I don't know what those fees look like, so we have to look into that further before we make a decision. Yeah. Joey, they don't address the condition of the youth. They're only a statistic until the act has happened. Yeah, because a lot of those incidents, nationwide at least, are under the age of 25, I think is the... Yeah, where... Because I'm paying attention this time. And, I'm tapping my screen. There we go. There you go. Yeah, I don't think I have any further thoughts. I think I finished that thought before I got distracted with a problematic comment. So we only got about 10 minutes left, so if anybody has any questions, pop them in. Otherwise, we think we'll end a little bit early. I have another meeting at 8 o'clock that I need to be on, so I think we're good unless somebody has questions. I'll leave it up for about a minute because I know there's a delay on all of the platforms. Sometimes it takes 30 seconds to 60 seconds for those to show up. Other than that, I'm going to mention, this weekend we've got our normal strategy meeting and field operations meeting, 9 and 10 o'clock on Saturday. Taylor, go ahead.
I was just going to say on October 4th, we're doing a TikTok-a-thon.
TikTok-a-thon. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a fundraiser for Jared. So $1, $2, spread the word. It's going to be, we're going to have an AMA, which is Ask Me Anything. So, if you want to know if he prefers chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream, if you want to know, what his favorite horror movie is, anything, and it can be policy related, not policy related, just fun questions. We're gonna do that, and then, hopefully to raise money for some travel that we've got going on in October.
That is the end goal. We're trying to get in front of more people across the state, and the only way to do that is with funding. So if you can, please donate. If you know somebody else who can, have them donate. It's literally the only way I'm going to be able to travel the state and talk to more people. So if you want to see me in person, we need funding. Cool. All right. Well, we've given it about a minute. I don't see any other questions.